One of the simplest ways to transform the appearance of your images when using ComfyUI and Stable Diffusion is to select different samplers and schedulers in the K-sampler. We covered how to use the K-sampler in our second tutorial in this series, which you can find on humanaugmented.com. In this video, we will see how these different samplers, which affect how an image is resolved, along with different schedulers, which impact the smoothness and detail of the final render. Nothing else has been changed, and all images were generated with the Stable Diffusion 3.5 large model set to 20 steps and a CFG set to 1. Euler tends to be the default sampler with the normal scheduler. It produces good results, which are generally clean with bright and vivid colors. Using the exponential scheduler produces a slightly more ornate look that is also softer with hazier depth of field effects in our sample image. The SGM uniform scheduler is generally a good one to use if you want sharper detail in your images, although it can lose some subtlety when it comes to other effects. Finally, Keras is often employed when people want a more creative output, although, as we shall see, it works better with samplers other than Euler. Hun is a more accurate but slower version of Euler. It's not one that I employ very often, partially because of speed, but also because I prefer the slightly softer focus of Euler. With the exponential scheduler, the effect looks slightly more like that of a drawn image or animation, but it does also bring out considerably more detail. Again, as with Euler, Hun SGM produces a sharp focus for your images, although with less elaborate detail. Hun Keras is interesting in its effects, generally providing slightly different compositions and also adding some better effects for things like depth of field. DPMPP is one that I often use for photorealistic images, primarily because it adds some additional noise which looks a little like film grain. The exponential one is a great scheduler to try out with DPMPP because it can create very different effects, as in the ornate gold detail in this image. Keras is also interesting in this respect and can transform your image considerably just by selecting a different scheduler. When we look to using the SGM scheduler, however, there is nothing to see. DPMPP literally failed to produce an image, and you will sometimes find that different samplers and schedulers refuse to work. If that happens to you, it may not be a problem with your prompt, but with your sampler. Finally, while LCM is a sampler I sometimes use for photorealistic images, it works better with lower step models than our example. With the normal scheduler, it produces little in the way of detail. By contrast, although it is too soft, the exponential scheduler is starting to pick up some hazy, dreamy effects with our sample. As with normal, there's little detail with the SGM scheduler at 20 steps, but we've also swapped it out with a 4-step image which produces good results very quickly. Keras is one that works very well with LCM. While not as detailed as with other samplers at higher steps, it can produce interesting creative effects. As our examples with LCM demonstrate, to get the best results when generating your images, you need to do more than just select a sampler and scheduler. Different versions of these work better with different step settings and CFGs and can also produce very different results with various checkpoints and image models. Nonetheless, if you try out a prompt and don't get the results you expect when you hit the run button, in some cases wildly inaccurate, you may get much better results with a different sampler or scheduler.